Welcome to Interviewing Skills presented by CareerSource Southwest Florida. You applied for a job you think you're perfect for. You get that all-important phone call to come in for an interview. Now what? Think of a job interview as an opportunity. You know you're right for the job. You just have to convince the person who will be hiring you. Somehow you have to communicate that you have what the job requires. You might not get the first job you apply for or interview for. Might take time and practice, but don't get discouraged. Think of every job you don't get as a lesson learned. Everyone encounters a big no at some point in the career search. If you apply for a job that you don't get, try calling to see what you can learn. In a courteous, respectful way, ask what you should have done differently that might have made a difference. Was your resume wrong? Were they looking for someone with more experience? What can you do to prepare for the next time a similar position comes open? Continue looking for a job that you think is right for you and figure out how to convince people that you are right for it. Your job is out there. Discovering it and landing it can be a challenge, but you're up to it. According to the Society for Human Resource Management, most hiring managers can tell if a job seeker will not be a good fit within 15 minutes of the start of the interview. Helping you, the job seeker, prepare for the interview is critical to your success. So how do you change your job interview into a job offer? By learning what the 4 phases of the interview process are, as well as some strategies to move through each phase of the interview process successfully. So let's get started. So let's look at what the employer goals are for an interview. So what is the purpose of an interview? There are 4 goals that employers look at as outcomes for each interview. 1, the job must be filled. Will it be you? 2, to find people who fit with the values of the organization. 3, find people who will be engaged, who believe in what the company does and what their job requires. And 4, find the people who can grow with and without the company. There are 4 phases associated with the interview process. There is the preparation phase, the start phase, the body phase, and the conclusion phase. To be ready for an interview means that job seekers are prepared to navigate through each of these phases successfully. Typically, the interview itself is only 15 minutes to an hour. There are exceptions when interviews may take longer. But for the most part, preparing for the interview takes a lot more time than the actual interview itself. As a job seeker, you should spend more time getting ready for the interview than in the interview. Phase 1, time to prepare. When a job seeker goes to an interview, the job seeker has to realize that he or she is not just applying for any job. The job seeker is applying for a specific job. You, the job seeker, will have to learn that getting ready for each interview is very important to your success. The job seeker has the unique opportunity to do homework and get ready to impress the interviewer. You must get to know the company. The job seeker should research what products or services the company offers and who their customers are. You should also research who the company's major competitors are. This information should be used to establish a frame of reference to answer interview questions. The information about the company's goods and services will help the job seeker emphasize the work history and skills that he or she has that relates to what the company is looking for. To relate further to the employer, job seekers should also research the company's reputation, their values, the job duties, responsibilities associated with the position, and the educational requirements associated with the position. Then practice answering questions based on the information you secured during your research. The information should be embedded in answers to the most basic questions. Let's review. For example, one employer in the state of Florida devotes an entire website to the job application and career development process. And with a staff of over 60,000 individuals, there is no wondering why. Each major section has an overview that highlights how the staff from the entire company must work together to make each customer's experience positive. In just a few minutes of research, We have learned that teamwork is highly valued by this company. So how does a job seeker applying with this company use this information to his or her advantage? The job seeker makes sure to highlight teamwork in his or her interview answers. For example, most employers ask about the interviewee's strengths. Teamwork should be a focus in the job seeker answer. But how will a job seeker know how to use this information to formulate answers to critical questions? Some job seekers will be comfortable with this process, but others may not. This may be especially true if you have not worked in a long time and are not getting past the interview. Now let's apply what we have discussed to our job seeker customer, Mary. Mary found a job opening at a local hospital. She is very interested in the unit clerk position and researches both the company and the requirements associated with the job opening. Mary learns that the job will require her to transcribe physician's orders, as well as complete and file medical records. Remember in our previous lessons, we learned that Mary has skills that can be transferred to this job. We highlighted these skills during the application process. However, Mary also needs to learn to highlight these skills during the interview process as well. When Mary is asked by the employer, "What is one strength that you have that would benefit our unit?" she can reply, "I have experience taking orders from customers and entering those orders correctly in a computer system. Therefore, I know I can learn the computer system the hospital uses to transcribe doctor's orders into patients' records. I know my experience caring for my mother, as well as working in the customer service industry for over a decade, has prepared me to work hard for you." In one answer, Mary has stated that she can take orders from customers, relay the information correctly, and learn a computer system. Why is this so important? In a survey conducted by the Society for Human Resource Management, 56% of hiring professionals polled stated that interviewees who convey that they have skills directly related to the job stand out positively during an interview over any other behavior noted. This leads us to the next step in the preparation process. Job seekers must practice answering interview questions so they are comfortable answering questions and are confident in their answers. Failure to practice may lead to several problems. For example, if the individual is not comfortable with the question, the individual may stammer, or the individual may actually talk on rather than getting to the focus of the issue and responding with a complete answer. This is also known as the babbling brook syndrome, where you just keep going. In order to reset your thoughts in the interview, if you have your resume on your lap, look down at your resume to bring yourself back to focus. Job seekers must be comfortable with the most common questions asked by employers. The most common questions include, "Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why should I hire you? Why do you want this job?" Job seekers should be comfortable answering these and other common questions with information specific to the employers and job openings. There is one question asked in almost every interview, which very few people are prepared to answer. "Do you have any questions for me?" And this question is critical. The answer to this question indicates if the interviewee is engaged in the job search process. The answer to this question must be prepared in advance. The job seeker must be comfortable asking questions that are relevant and appropriate. The job seeker should be comfortable asking questions that are relevant and appropriate. Questions that are smart are focused on the position and not generic in nature. Additionally, job seekers should not ask, "Well, what does this job pay?" Pay is negotiated during the job offer phase. It's typically not discussed at the interview unless approached by the employer. In fact, only 15% of hiring professionals stated that salary should be approached by the interviewee during the interview process in a Society for Human Resource Management survey. Job seekers should not ask what job duties are associated with the position unless the job posting was very generic and no other information could be obtained during research. If the job seeker asks this question, it appears as if they did not research the company or the job and really do not know what they're applying for. Instead, the job seeker should demonstrate that they have read the job advertisement and are asking for more specific information. Let's go back to Mary. Remember her? She is interviewing for a job with a growing hospital. In her research, she read that the hospital has expanded to other counties and recently added a children's intensive care unit. She may decide to ask, I read where the hospital has expanded and would like to expand even further over the next 5 years. Does this department plan on expanding as well? Or she may ask, I noted in the job advertisement that you're looking for an array of skills. What skill do you think is most important for a candidate filling this position? When she hears the answer, she can comment on her ability to meet the needs of the department and why she is the best candidate for the job. Mary has planned ahead with a goal of learning more about the hospital and demonstrating she has researched the company. Even well-prepared candidates, however, will have to face tough questions. Why? Because every interview will include the difficult-to-answer questions. Job seekers should be prepared to answer these questions in a manner that highlight positive attributes. The more comfortable you are with answering these questions, the easier the interviews will be. These questions are designed to screen out those candidates that will not meet the employer's needs or fit in at the company. When answering these questions, the answers must be prepared in advance, sound comfortable, and sound remarkable. Before an interview, job seekers should ensure their document organizers are up to date and contain copies of their resumes, as well as copies of their sample applications. Job seekers need to make sure they have printed their reference pages. The reference page lists the job seeker's professional references. Reference pages must be grammatically correct and should be printed on the same paper as the resume. Also, make sure when interviewing, plan out the route. Before going to an interview, job seekers should make travel plans. You will need to secure the address for the interview location and map out the route for getting to the interview. Whether you are traveling by car or by bus, you need to plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early to the interview. This requires job seekers to know where to park, where to check in for the interview. And here's a tip. When mapping out the route, do a test run at the same time you would be leaving for the interview so you are aware of the traffic patterns in real time. Job seekers must be prepared to dress appropriately for the interview. This is a critical part of being interviewed. Many job seeker candidates do not dress appropriately. Many job seekers wear sometimes too much cologne or perfume. Some women wear too much makeup, which gives off the wrong impression. Individuals go to interviews with inappropriate hairstyles. While some hairstyles may be in fashion, they are not appropriate for a job interview. Some individuals will dress in a manner that is comfortable or fashion forward, but not professional, while others will overdress, wearing clothes that are more appropriate for a formal affair. Another issue often noticed by employers is improper grooming. In other words, a male interviewee has not shaved his face or the interviewee has not cleaned his or her nails. So how do we prepare for the interview? Well, you should dress at the same level or a little better than the job that you are interviewing for. Job seekers should never wear tank tops, flip-flops, or shorts. Clothing should look conservative. A woman wearing a skirt should wear a skirt that is at or below knee length. If wearing a pantsuit, both men and women should wear an appropriate conservative top. The use of a jacket and tie for men is dependent on the job being interviewed for. The rule, less is more, is a very good rule to help govern the style of hair, as well as the use of makeup and jewelry. Hair should be simple and clean cut. Women with long hair should not focus on a fancy updo. If the customer wants to pull her hair back, it should be pulled back in a simple manner. Men should be clean shaven. Makeup should be natural looking. Once again, the rule, less is more, applies. Very little jewelry should be worn. Little to no cologne or perfume should be worn to interviews. Job seekers should be prepared by having clean nails and hands as well as clean shoes. So how do I know how I will perform during an interview? Many local workforce development boards, such as us or CareerSource Southwest Florida, have skill development programs teaching job seekers how to interview, which is what you're participating in now. But how do we know what will really happen in an interview? How do we know if we are dressed appropriately for the company, respond to questions appropriately, and interact in a professional manner? Well, you know what they say, practice makes perfect, or better. You can ask CareerSource staff or a friend to review what you will wear to the interview. Also ask the same person to conduct a mock interview to ensure you are ready. And there are free mock interview software online as well. Additionally, practice answering both the basic and the tough questions so that you are confident in your answers. Because the preparation phase sets the stage for the last 3 phases of the interview process, let's briefly review the do's and don'ts of the prep phase. Job seekers should know about the job and about the employer. You should be prepared to answer questions using research found on the employer and the job opening. Job seekers should know how to answer both common and tough questions. The job seeker should know where the interview will take place and how to get to the location. You should know what to wear to the interview. And I know this sounds too basic, but did you know that if you interview at a hospital, you should wear closed-toed shoes? Why? Because it is an OSHA safety standard and shows the recruiter you are aware of your surroundings. Finally, the job seeker must ensure critical documents are prepared in your document organizer. Do not treat every job interview the same by failing to research the employer or the job. Each job is unique as well as each employer is unique. The job seeker should not embellish answers or lie to make them look good in the interview. Do not assume that all answers can be the same for every employer and fail to practice for each interview as a unique event. Job seekers should not wait until the last minute to get dressed or ensure that they have clothes to wear. Being late to an interview or dressed inappropriately is a sure way to be rejected by the employer. Let's move to the next phase of the interview process. Phase 2 is the start phase of the interview. An interview actually starts when you leave your house. Job seekers should be prepared to leave on time and arrive early with all required documents. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, 33% of hiring professionals make a decision not to hire an individual in under 5 minutes. This means first impressions are critical to the interview. One of the fastest ways to lose the opportunity to work for an employer is being late. In fact, 58% of hiring managers stated that being late for an interview was a deal breaker. Another 39% of hiring managers stated it may not be a deal breaker, but it was still a problem if the candidate was late for the interview. This means that over 90% of hiring managers had a problem with candidates being late for the interview. Upon arrival, the job seeker should turn off their cell phone, or better yet, don't take it with you at all. This is critical, as 40% of hiring managers found that the applicant's cell phone ringing, buzzing, or vibrating during the interview was a deal breaker. Next, the job seeker must check in with the appropriate party, which is often a staff member at a security desk or receptionist. Please understand that first impressions from all staff are important. The job seeker must be polite, friendly, and upbeat when speaking with the receptionist. And if you were not given a position description in advance of the position you're applying for, this might be the time when you can ask the receptionist if there is one available so that you can review it before the interview. If you do not know the name of the interviewer, Ask the receptionist for the person's full name in order to greet the interviewer formally. If you are sitting when the interviewer approaches, you should stand up to greet the interviewer. It is important that the job seeker be prepared to shake hands and offer a greeting using the interviewer's last name. An example may be, "Thank you for seeing me today, Ms. Johnson. I am very excited to be interviewing with your company." Offer a firm but not crushing handshake. When speaking, be upbeat and offer an approachable smile. Basically, you should look and act like you're glad to be there. Phase 3 of the interview is called the body of the interview. The body of the interview is often the focus of most job seekers' attention. Being that this is the time when employers start to speak with job seekers about items of substance, job seekers often focus on what is going to occur during this hour. Many times, job seekers want to jump right into the questions to get the interview over. Instead, you should take a deep breath and relax. Most interviews start with small talk. This is normal and should be expected. You should practice using small talk and become accustomed to conversing with employers so you feel comfortable conveying information as well as receiving information while using restraint by listening as well as talking. You may find that you actually have something in common with the interviewers. At the beginning of the interview, the job seeker should offer the employer a copy of his or her current resume printed on nice quality paper. This copy should not be a text document, but a formatted document that is professionally constructed. During this phase of the interview, job seekers should expect to be asked a host of questions. Many times the employer will start with, "Tell me a little bit about yourself," to create an opportunity of engagement and to make the interview more like a conversation. This is not a time to discuss or talk about your personal life. This is a time to discuss your career accomplishments, knowledge, skills, and experience. Be careful if they ask you a two-part question. If not sure, request to repeat the question. Prepare about 4 to 6 sentences, sometimes known as an elevator speech. The elevator speech gives more detail about your professional experience, worked in different settings, shows skills and qualifications. You want to ensure that you are prepared to remain professional and on point, as well as able to answer all questions with confidence and keep answers clear and concise. While answering questions, the job seeker should be prepared, having conducted research on the company. You should show that you know something about the company while answering and asking questions. The reasons for leaving question. This is a difficult question that everyone typically tends to stumble over. Be careful with your answers. If they ask, "Why did you leave your last job?" just say the who, what, when, where, and why. Basically, you are telling the story. Never say negative comments about previous employers. Be honest but diplomatic and never lie. We don't want to give too much information, but don't come across as if you are hiding something. Turn negatives into positives and be honest. Behavioral or situation questions are commonplace in interviews. Job seekers should be prepared to answer such a question. An easy way to respond to the question is using the STAR method. Let's look at the situation. If you are asked, "Tell me about a time you had an angry customer," how did you handle the situation? Now, this is a two-part question, so you're going to want to explain what the situation was and then how you handled it. And your response should cover STAR. S is situation, what exactly it was, the task, what was going on, the action that you took, and what was the result of the action that you took. It's a simple way to remember answers for tough questions. We need to have a can-do attitude. If you are asked about a skill that you do not have, you must be careful. Job seekers should not indicate they have the skills. This would be dishonest. We don't want to embellish what skills we have. The job seeker should indicate that they can learn the skill. With each question, you should demonstrate a can-do attitude. And don't forget to think about soft skills when you prepare for interviews to be sure you demonstrate everything you have to offer the employer. If you are extremely qualified, have terrific application materials, a targeted resume, and you're interviewing for jobs, but always coming up with a silver medal instead of the gold, it's possible that you're bumping up against an elusive category, likability. Also known in the industry as cultural fit. Likability is a reason many candidates don't make the final cut. The interviewers either didn't like them or didn't believe they would mesh well with current employees. One of the reasons that most employers don't provide specific feedback to a second-place candidate is because it's difficult to explain why somebody doesn't fit in, or that they didn't get hired because the team just didn't like the candidate and couldn't imagine spending a lot of time together. Emotional intelligence, otherwise known as soft skills, is the category of skills most likely involved when evaluating likability or fit. Wikipedia defines them as personal attributes that enhance an individual's interactions, job performance, and career prospects. Unlike hard skills, which are about a person's skill set and ability to perform a certain type of task or activity, soft skills relate to a person's ability to interact effectively with coworkers and customers and are broadly applicable both in and outside the workplace. Soft skills include attitude, communication skills, time management, critical thinking, and a slew of other categories that do not relate to intelligence. There's no question that soft skills play a role in most, if not all, hiring decisions. So how can you demonstrate these skills during an interview? Let's take a look at the top 5 soft skills that are important to work into an interview. Number 1, work ethic. Make sure to weave your thoughts about how important the company's mission and vision are to you and explain why you're willing to go the extra mile to help the organization succeed. One tenet of evaluating candidates is that past performance is a predictor of future results. Make sure that you prove that you have a strong work ethic by giving examples from the past about how you went above and beyond the call of duty to get a job done. Describe how you always complete projects efficiently and on time, why you're punctual and persistent, and how you balance your drive to succeed with the company's goals. The second soft skill we want to look at is positive attitude. Give examples of how you improved employee morale in a past position or how your positive attitude helped motivate your colleagues or those you managed. Some people are naturally bubbly and always upbeat. Others have a more tame and low energy demeanor. Especially if you tend to be more low-key, smile when you shake the interviewer's hand and make an extra effort to add some intonation and expression to your responses, especially if you are very shy. Make sure you aren't boring or dry, or you could lose your chance to be hired. The third skill we want to look at is communication skills. Your interview is a great opportunity to demonstrate how well you communicate, so be sure you prepare and practice responses to showcase your best skills. Be concrete with these examples and bring proof to the interview. Provide examples of materials you've created or written campaigns you developed in past positions. Time management is another critical skill. This is a crucial skill many employers seek in their hires. It's especially important for candidates who want to work in a startup to know how to manage their time, tasks, and responsibilities effectively. Be prepared to explain how you prioritize the most important items first, delegate the items that others can do, and figure out a way to get things done in the confines of your resources on the job. And finally, self-confidence. You can demonstrate self-confidence at the interview by the way you present yourself, including how you dress for the interview, the way you approach to shake hands, and how you speak about your experiences during the interview. If you're not particularly confident, practice acting like you are. Make direct eye contact when speaking with strangers. Listen to your own voice. Is it shrill or timid? Rehearse speaking in a more confident sounding voice. And don't forget about your body language, which is one of the first ways employers will gauge your confidence levels. If you tend to hunch over, make sure you think about sitting up during the interview. And that brings us to phase 4, or the conclusion of the interview process. If you ever felt weird or awkward at the end of a conversation or a first date, this is how many job seekers feel at the end of an interview. They're not sure who should have the last word or how to exit gracefully. In phase 4 of the interview process, we have to exit gracefully at the conclusion of the interview. Often the conclusion begins when the interviewer asks, "Do you have any questions for me?" This is a sign that the interview is coming to an end. Before leaving, you should ask questions that show you prepared in advance if you have not had an opportunity to ask questions throughout the interview. This includes using research about the company and demonstrating that you are interested in the position. Your interview shouldn't be seen as some type of interrogation. It's a getting to know you meeting, so feel free to ask questions. However, your first questions shouldn't be, "How much do I get paid?" or "How's the 401k plan here?" Instead, ask questions that show you understand the job and the company's needs. The company's needs come before yours. Be quick to pick up on the interviewer's comments and ask relevant questions. What would a typical day be like in this position? What kind of training is available for advancement or to assist with job performance? If all of your questions were asked and answered throughout the interview, you may respond with, "I don't have any questions at this time, but if I do have a question after today, may I contact you? And how would you like me to contact you?" To move towards a successful conclusion, if requested, you may want to leave a copy of any professional reference or letter of recommendations that you may have. When leaving, smile, shake the interviewer's hand, and thank the interviewer for the opportunity. And always get a business card. You should never leave an interview without a business card or the full names of everyone that you interviewed with. So let's look at the different types of interviews. In today's interview process, we are now into virtual interviews, and we have set up a separate webinar for that whole topic, as it's fairly new for everyone. But let's get started with the typical types of interviews that we all have experienced. The first one is a stress interview, and these are used by the employer to see how you handle yourself as a job seeker. They may be sarcastic or try and be argumentative, or they may keep you waiting and they want to see how you handle that. They may lapse into silence at some point during the questioning, which, when there's dead space in an interview, we tend to rise up and try and fill the space with more words. If it is silent and you don't have anything to add to the conversation, let the silence be there. This is used as an attempt to unnerve you. One-on-one interviews are the most typical that we see. In a one-on-one interview, it's been established that you, the job seeker, have the skills and education necessary for the position. This is the most traditional interview. And the first line is very important and that you need to understand. When you get called for an interview, you're not there because you're trying to prove you have the skills. They already know you have the basic core required skills, or they wouldn't call you in for an interview. What they're trying to find out is if you're a fit for the company and to delve deeper into your skill sets. So be prepared to answer more in-depth questions about your skill sets. The employer wants to see if you're going to fit in with the company and if your skills complement the rest of the department. Your goal should be to establish rapport with the interviewer and show them that your qualifications will benefit the company. And once in a while, you may get a lunch interview. The same rules apply in lunch interviews as in those held at the office. The setting may be more casual, but it is a business lunch, and you have to be careful on what you say. You have to use the lunch interview to develop common ground with your interviewer. Sometimes, if it's casual, we may say more than we need to. So be careful that you don't get lulled into that. Another one is a committee or a panel interview. These can be intimidating, and they are fairly common in some markets. Job seekers will face several members of the company, and they all have a say in if you get hired or not. The employer can ask you, the job seeker, to demonstrate your problem-solving skills, and then they're going to outline a situation and ask you to formulate a plan that deals with the problem. The interviewers are looking for how you, the job seeker, apply your knowledge and skills to a real-life situation. The other form of a committee interview is if they bring in several job seekers at the same time and interview 4 or 5 people as a group. And those can be very daunting because you don't want to say, if you have to answer the question, you're the 5th person, you go, well, what they said. They're looking to see if you can think on your feet and come up with fresh ideas. So just be careful with those. You don't want to restate what someone has already said. And this is where we talk about the group interview. And that's usually designed because they're trying to see who has leadership potential for prospective managers and employees. They're going to be dealing with the public. The front runner candidates are all gathered together in an informal, it's a discussion type interview. But sometimes a subject is introduced and the interviewer will start the discussion, and the goal of the group interview is to see how you as the job seeker interact with others and how you use your knowledge and reasoning powers to win others over. Can you persuade them to come to your decisions? The general structured interview is a screening interview, and it's usually combined with that. And they're usually done if there are time constraints that many companies have during the hiring process. Often you'll meet with a supervisor over the position that you're applying for, and during the interview you'll be discussing the specifics of the position, the company, and also the industry. It's almost like a 2-in-1. And then we get into screening interviews. A screening interview is meant to weed out unqualified candidates. That's the sum total of what it is. Providing facts about the skills is more important than establishing rapport. So you're not looking to find common ground here. You're looking to make sure that they understand you have the skills to meet what they're looking for. Interviewers are going to work from an outline of points that they want to cover because they're going to look for inconsistencies between your resume, and they're going to challenge you on your qualifications. So if they start asking things that are already on your resume, you can't take the posture and think, well, they already have that information. Why are they asking me again? You need to fully develop your answer because they want more than what is on your resume, or they feel your resume is lacking some detail. So if you start seeing that, understand that they're looking for more. And one type of screening interview is the telephone interview. Typically, that's the first step a company takes after the resumes have been scrutinized. The purpose of this meeting is to assess the skills and personality traits of the potential candidates. The objective ultimately is to screen out those applicants that the interviewer feels should not be hired due to a lack of skills or bad first impressions. The interviewer must also screen in those candidates that they feel would make a valuable contribution to the company. So your job during this preliminary meeting is to convince this person you are worthy to take the next step. Telephone interviews, as we said, are a screening tool, and they're meant to eliminate poorly qualified candidates so that only a few are left for personal interviews. So your mission in this interview is to be invited for a personal face-to-face interview. And I'm going to tell you, having gone through telephone interviews myself, telephone interviews are hard because in a face-to-face interview, you hope you can look at the interviewer and by looking at their face, kind of get an idea of how they're feeling. With the telephone interview, you don't have that luxury. You're saying your answers without getting any kind of indication of how you're doing in answering the questions. Informational interviews. This is one typically that you as a job seeker request with human resources or a department supervisor in the career field that you're interested in. And the purpose of the interview is to help you find out more about a particular career position or the company. You're looking for information from the people at the company in hopes that they might refer you to someone else in their company or to somebody they may know outside their company who could use your skills. The informational interview is a part of the cold calling process whereby you as a job seeker are generating your own job leads. And then we have virtual interviews. Virtual interviews are fairly new. They have really taken on new significance with the COVID-19 pandemic. These are when a job seeker and a hiring company interview from different locations using a video chat. Virtual interviews provide more complete communication than a phone interview and allow interviewers from more than one location to attend. They want to see if the job seeker will fit in with the company and how their skills complement the rest of the department. In these one-on-one interviews, the job seeker's goal is you want to try and establish rapport with the interviewer and to show them that your qualifications will benefit the company. So now that you know the different types of interviews, let's talk about what do we do after the interview. Well, according to CareerBuilder, job seekers don't always follow up with employers because they don't want to annoy hiring managers. However, failing to follow up after an interview can actually do more damage than good. Did you know that less than 50% or half of the people who are interviewed send a thank you note? It is absolutely necessary to send a thank you note on the same day or by the closing of the next business day, which in essence is within 2 business days. Sending a well-crafted and timely thank you note can add a positive impression to an already positive connection. Handwritten notes get more attention. Remember, a handwritten note is warmer and more personal. Check your spelling and grammar, keep it positive and short, and have someone proofread it for you before you send it via email or regular mail. But you never want to fax a thank you note. Sending a thank you note after a job interview is very important. It shows that you have manners and it often gives the interviewing candidate an edge. Well, why do you think that is? Well, imagine interviewing 10 people for a unit clerk position. At first, you remember the first person that interviewed because her answers were strong. But then you interview 3 more people. While you remember what they look like, you start to get their answers jumbled up. You get confused regarding small details, and after 5 people, you begin to forget what each person looked like. Although you took good notes, you realize that you could easily get individuals confused because at that point or at the end of the day, 10 people might as well be 100. So then the employer receives that thank you note from Mary. Her name, resume, and face pops back up into your head. While you may still be objectively reviewing each person's answers and qualifications, there is no doubt that her information stands out. This is because she followed up after the interview, and so it brought her full attention back to Mary as a candidate and put her back on top of the list. So the first thing that job seekers should do after an interview is write down notes about the interview to keep details fresh. These notes are written down on index cards or a pad of paper or someplace where you have notes that are associated with the position. Or you can use a spreadsheet on the computer to track your job search efforts. But you should jot down notes in your spreadsheet. You know, there could always be a second interview, and those notes could help you prepare for such an interview. Next, you should write a thank you note to the interviewer. This should also occur immediately after the interview. Thank you note should be mailed, as we said, within 2 business days of the interview. Sending a well-crafted and timely thank you note can add a positive impression to an already positive connection. It also gives you a chance if you forgot to mention something in an interview, because where do we do our best interviews? Usually as we're rethinking it in the car on the way home. So handwritten notes get more attention. Remember, a handwritten note is warmer and more personalized. So check your spelling, as we said, and your grammar. Keep it positive and short. Have someone proofread it for you before you send it via email or regular mail. Never fax it, as we said, and keep them brief. These are not cover letters, but they're opportunities to demonstrate both respect for the interviewer and interest in the job. Job seekers should keep thank you notes short and simple, thanking interviewers for the opportunity to interview. You know, I always tell people dollar stores are great for thank you notes because you can purchase a box of them for $1 and just keep blank ones handy so you can write a little note in it after the interview while all of the information is still fresh in your mind. Make sure you address the interviewer formally. You are not on a first name basis with the person that's interviewing you. So for example, if the interviewing party was named John Smith, the note should be addressed to Mr. Smith, not John. And if it was more than one interviewer, you have your choice. You can send a thank you note to the individuals on their own, or you can combine it as one thank you note, but address it to both of the interviewers. So let's look at the sections in a thank you note. So we're going to review each element of the formal thank you letter. So in the first section, the job seeker's information is provided along with the date the letter was written and the interviewer's contact information. And then the first section should begin with the job seeker's name and mailing address. In this section, you need to include the date the letter was written. The thank you letter should be created and mailed immediately to prevent a large discrepancy between the date on the letter and the date the letter is received by the employer. And there should be 4 line spaces between the date and the interviewer's address. You know, one of the worst things you can do is spend all this time writing a really nice thank you note, put it aside, and then a week and a half, 2 weeks later, find it and decide, oh, I need to mail this. At that point, you could do more damage by mailing it that late. It looks like it's an afterthought. The second section includes the interviewer's name and their contact information. The interviewer should be formally addressed in that section of the document. Now let's look at the introduction. This section includes a salutation or formal greeting to the interviewer, as well as the body of the letter. The content of the letter should be short and to the point. The letter thanks the interviewer for the opportunity to interview with the company, restates the date of the interview, and indicates the job seeker is enthusiastic about the opportunity to work for the company. And the last 2 lines provide the job seeker's contact information. Simple, short, and to the point. The conclusion. This section is the closing of the letter, and that includes the signature of the job seeker or candidate. The job seeker should formally close the letter using sincerely and then his or her printed name. The letter is mailed using the post service. The letter should be personally signed. If you don't sign a mailed letter, the document will seem impersonal. And yes, I have myself received thank you notes or letters that they were really great, but the person forgot to sign it. So that undoes everything that you set out to do. Some additional tips for sending a thank you letter include using quality paper and envelopes, as well as ensuring that any handwritten sentiments are easy to read and well written. Additionally, you should include information that addresses what the interviewer was looking for. This is where jotting down notes after the interview really pays off. The job seeker, which is you, are able to review the information and ensure that you can respond to the needs of the employer in a concise manner. So this is a question that I get a lot. Should the letter be sent by traditional mail or email? Well, frequently individuals want to know if they can send their thank you letters by email instead of traditional mail. More and more, as we're into the age of technology, employers are looking for thank you letters by email. In fact, 50% of hiring professionals stated they prefer thank you letters be received via email than handwritten. However, that still means that 50% of hiring professionals preferred more formal sentiments be received via traditional mail. And, here's a story about thank you notes. I was helping a young woman, and the employer had 100 candidates apply. The employer made a point of telling me what sealed this person getting the job was that out of 100 candidates, she was the only one that sent a thank you note. And because of that, he thought she was very conscientious and really, really wanted the job. And so because of that one small thank you note, she ended up getting the job over 100 other people. So never underestimate the power of a thank you note. So how do you know who to mail the letter to? Well, when you go to the interview, simply request the business card of the interviewer. This should be attached to the index card if you're keeping all of your job search materials on index cards, or wherever you're keeping your information for your job search, so that you can track who you spoke to during the interview, as well as the interviewer's email and business address. If you're using a spreadsheet to organize your job search, then the contact information of the interviewer should be recorded on the spreadsheet or other job search organizer. Follow-up is key. In addition to sending a thank you letter, you should also call the employer to find out if the position has been filled. When should this occur? The follow-up phone call should occur 1 to 2 weeks after the interview. The job seeker must be prepared to call the employer and be comfortable with what he or she will say. Otherwise, the job seeker may avoid following up as a result of being nervous. I had a young person who really, really wanted a job with an employer, and they were so excited. They told me, it's really strange, but the employer, they know me by my first name when I call. Well, that's not always a good thing if you were interviewing and haven't been hired yet. This person was calling the employer every single day, and then they couldn't understand why they didn't get the job. Because they were calling so frequently, the employer felt as if they were being pressured and almost stalked by this individual. And really all it was this person's first job, and they were just really excited. And this was the company that they wanted to work for. It was their dream job. So tempering enthusiasm is really important. And finally, keep in mind, an effective job interview results in a hire who will do the job, improve the job, live the values, and improve themselves. Be aware of the psychological factors at play during the interview process. Be honest with yourself. Hiring the right people is secondary to the details of the job. The reasons people are rejected are often not the reasons others are hired. This concludes our video on interviewing skills. Thank you for participating.